Hello, I'm Beth Joey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, welcome. This is the channel where I paint my face like a clown, turn my camera on and talk about books that I love. I say paint my face like a clown because I saw this particular look on another YouTuber's channel and loved it and then attempted it myself, and I'm just not kind of sure how exactly I feel about it, but you know what, why the hell not? It took me 2 hours to do. I don't know about everywhere else in the world, and this is probably the complete opposite for sunny places like Australia, where I'm from, but in London, January is the worst. It's cold, it's dreary, it's drizzly, it's the middle of winter, so it's just not fun. And then add on top of that, all the hype is down because Christmas and New Year's have just gone by. I don't know about everybody else, but me, I'm personally trying to knock off a few pounds as I recover from the post-Christmas feast. There's just nothing happening in January. It's a bit of a blah month. In honor of the blah that is January, I have put together a list of book recommendations for that post-Christmas slump. In the spirit of Christmas, because I will never let go of the festive season, I have made a list of 12 books for the 12 days of Christmas that I didn't do this year, but I'm determined to do next year. I split these books into 3 categories. The first is fantasy, the second is romance, and the third is mystery. Those are genuinely the 3 genres that when I'm in a bit of a slump, when I don't really know what I want to read, when I'm sort of not loving the season and how the month is going, I immediately gravitate to those because I know they will take me out of my mind. Without further ado, let me get into my first category, which is fantasy, of course. Now, the first book in this category is one that I absolutely loved. I read it while I was in Norway, and that is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. Little Thieves follows a character named Vanya, who is the 13th daughter of a 13th daughter, which basically means she is the worst luck kind of person you could possibly be. As a result, her mother gives her away to death and fortune, and they take on Vanya as their sort of goddaughter. The bulk of this story focuses around one particular heist in which Vanya steals something that doesn't belong to her, and so she's cursed by another god-like being similar to that of death and fortune into essentially turning into her own greed. As for my thoughts on Little Thieves, it gave me these dark, Germanic fairy tale vibes, which I absolutely love for the winter season. Throughout the story, it really does kind of jab at the misogynistic nature of a lot of fairy tales with the whole, you know, man saves the girl kind of thing, and in this case it's very much the girl looking after herself, putting herself first, being selfish where she needs to be so that she can survive. And it also felt like this really authentic journey to redemption, as Vanya is thoroughly confused about how she's actually supposed to go about returning everything that she's owed. The next fantasy book on this list is Beasts of Prey by Ayana Gray. Beasts of Prey takes place in the broken city of Lokossa, where magic no longer exists. When the zoo's master threatens the very freedom of Coffee's family, everything goes horribly wrong and she unleashes a magic that she never knew she had. The second perspective of this story follows a man by the name of Econ, who is attempting to become a son of the Six, which is how I would describe it as sort of the military force in this land. But when Coffee unleashes her power in the Night Zoo, this disrupts Econ's sort of ritual to become a son of the Six. Now both characters believe that the only way that they can fulfill their dreams is to find the infamous Shatani, a beast that has been plaguing their land and dropping dead bodies at the edge of the forest. Desperate to redeem themselves, the two form a tentative alliance and venture out into the greater jungle to essentially find this creature and gain their redemption and get their lives back on track. Now I have to admit, when I did first pick up this book, I didn't absolutely love it because there was a lot of time spent in the setup at the very beginning. But I realized later on that was because it was a sequel, and that setup is incredibly important in terms of world building, character building, just establishing the different relationships and the different motivations for each character. The book does have a reasonably simple plot and a reasonably simple magic system in terms of understanding, but the political powers at play are absolutely fascinating, as each, you know, character is somewhat double-crossed in a way or aren't who they say they are. Anyone that's been watching my channel for a little bit would probably guess that this is going to be a book on this list because it was the book that got me back into reading, and that is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J Maas. House of Earth and Blood follows Bryce Quinlan, who believes she has the perfect life until one night all of her friends are mysteriously murdered. When the killer is put behind bars but then the murders start up again, Bryce is determined to find out who the real killer is, and then we welcome Hunt Athalar. Hunt is assigned to protect Bryce and solve this particular murder. Now this book is definitely way more intense than the other 2 that I have suggested so far, but it is an incredibly fast-paced read where you will just fly through the 800 pages so fast. And I think Sarah J Maas is really well known for making books like that. You just fly through without noticing the page count. Plus the sequel's coming out this year, so it's always a good time to pick it up. In this book, Sarah J Maas has effectively built up these character relationships and made you fall in love with them to the point that when particular characters are, you know, put at risk and threatened, I actually felt myself beginning to cry and get really worked up, and that's just not something that ever happens in books for me. There is just this absolutely heart-racing romance and then just this heart attack inducing battle scene at the end where you don't know how it's going to end and you don't know what's going to happen and who's going to come out of it alive, and it just it kills you. It makes you wish you could flick forward to the end of the book and find out what happened, but you know you can't because you don't want to miss anything. And the last fantasy pick is Jade Fire Gold by June C.L. Tan. This is a book that I definitely read towards the end of the year. I think it was around December time. Jade Fire Gold is set in an empire on the brink of war, in which enters An, who is absolutely no one, absolutely nobody, no family, no past, nothing. On the opposite side of things, we have Altan, our leading man, who is the lost heir. His family was forced off the throne, and he's just trying to regain what he feels he's owed. When Altan and An meet, Altan sees An as a way to reclaim the throne, and An sees the potential to unlock her abilities and understand why she has this power in the first place. There's incredible action sequences, a shadowy intrigue, a beautiful romance, and I think this is another perfect book to just get you out of your mindset in January. Next up, we have some romances. I'm going to start with a book/series that I heard about non-stop in 2021. So I couldn't not put it on this list because anyone who hasn't already read it needs to, because it's just an incredible series. And that is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, which is part of the Brown Sisters trilogy. This is the first book. This book follows Chloe Brown, a chronically ill computer geek who, after a near-death experiences, when she has this sort of flashback of her life, realizes there's just nothing to note. So she basically makes a bucket list of all the things she wants to accomplish in order to get a life. On this bucket list are things that she feels she's always missed out on because of her illness. So it's things like have a drunken night out, ride a motorbike, go camping, do something bad. But for someone who's never really done anything bad or adventurous in her life, she realizes that she needs a tutor, someone to help her through step-by-step guide. And so she chooses the sort of resident bad boy, just purely based off the fact that he has tattoos and rides a motorbike, Redford Morgan. The very first thing I have to say about Talia Hibbert is she has this incredible ability for making her characters feel really, really genuine and real, like they could just step off the pages. I love the setup of this book as well, in that you kind of watch Red show his really caring personality for other people in his life, so the other people in the building that they live in, before you see him act really genuine and caring towards Chloe. Makes it look like he's a caring person rather than being like really, really creepy and immediately attached to Chloe. There's this really great balance between the romantic interactions between Chloe and Red, and then these sort of familial interactions that they have as well, so you get this complete sense of who these characters are rather than just who they are in their relationship. And then of course it's incredibly sexy as well. The sexual tension you could cut with a knife, and I just loved this book. It will completely take you out of your slump and put you in just good moods. Next up is a book that I don't actually own. I borrowed it from the library but absolutely loved it, and that is You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry. You and Me on Vacation follows two friends who met at university and every summer since have been going on international travels together to explore the world. But at the beginning of the book, you're told something went wrong 2 summers ago and the relationship kind of abruptly ended. In the present time, you meet Poppy and Alex as they sort of work to come back together and vow to go on one last trip together. And then you're also taken back in time through these different flashbacks to all their different holidays, how they met, how their relationship developed, and eventually finding out what happened that broke up that friendship. So with my own Christmas holiday destroyed by coronavirus, I picked up this book because I very much wanted to live vicariously through these two characters, and it did not disappoint. Obviously, as this is a romance, there is plenty of mutual pining, plenty of sexual tension, plenty of will they, won't they throughout the book, which absolutely keeps you on edge. The next book is again another series that I did not stop hearing about all through 2021, and that is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. The Kiss Quotient follows a woman with Asperger's by the name of Stella Lane, who is perfectly happy in her career until her parents one day tell her that it's time for her to settle down and find a husband. To overcome her lack of experience and lack of knowledge, Stella decides that she needs a guide, a tutor, to teach her how to be the perfect girlfriend. And here is where Michael comes in, who is a professional escort. He has a firm no repeat customer policy until he meets Stella. The Kiss Quotient is just this perfect mix of sexy and heartwarming, and it's just gonna make your heart melt and pound at the same time. And I think it was also really great to see a romance from a different perspective, and how having something like Asperger's is going to come into play as you're trying to sort of build a relationship. The internal monologues, which of course always come into play with these sorts of books, were very, very insightful and incredibly well balanced in terms of those and then the rest of the dialogue in the book. And there was also a beautiful balance between romance and friendship, and then also familial scenes as well. Last up on my romance section is another book that I don't actually have on me because it's another one that I borrowed from the library, and that is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. The Soulmate Equation follows single mother and statistics wizard Jess Davis, who is quite happy with her life. She's quite comfortable until her friend sort of introduces her to this new dating service called Genetically. Genetically is essentially a service that matches you with your perfect match based on taking a swab of your DNA, which I just think is really fascinating. Just as a side note, I kind of like that sci-fi was mixed with romance here. Jess Davis submits her sample and basically puts in a note that she wants like high-level matches or nothing. Lo and behold, she is a 98% match, which is just extraordinarily high, never before seen in this service, with the service's founder, Dr. River. Genetically decides that they want to really capitalize on this 98% match and thrust River and Jess into this world of functions and interviews. Like I said before, the premise of this whole story is incredibly interesting, mixing sci-fi and romance. And then as someone who is just kind of obsessed with soulmates, I just love the idea of soulmates. It's always been kryptonite for me. Of course, this was always going to make for a very happy me. The familial element in this book was really thoroughly explored. They didn't shy away from showing both the positive and negative sides of Jess's family. And the fact that it wasn't really insta-love in the story as well felt really authentic, because Jess and River, being statistics people and scientists at heart, they were definitely going to go into this with a lot of skepticism, despite the fact that this service basically told them they're meant to be together. Now we are going to go into my mystery / thriller recommendations, which are really going to thrust you into a world of being a amateur crime solving detective. We're going to start with something slightly different, which is How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. How to Kill Your Family follows a woman by the name of Grace who is in prison for a crime she didn't commit. But that does not mean that she's innocent. Grace's mother has recently passed away, and Grace genuinely believes that the situation that she is in and the lack of money that she has is all her father's fault. And her father just so happens to be a mega rich, mega douchey man that had sort of like a summer fling with her mother and completely left her. As a result of this, Grace decides that she is going to enact a plot to take revenge against his entire family in order to have access to the inheritance that she believes she is owed. Now this one I wouldn't exactly describe as a pick-me-up book for January, but it's definitely going to thrust you into a world where you're constantly conflicted between who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, who you're supposed to like, who you're supposed to hate. It's all told by a very morally ambiguous character. Despite the obvious narcissism of the main character, I did find myself kind of rooting for her throughout the book, which was really a struggle for me because I don't want to. Next up, we have a sort of crime mystery book, which I found absolutely hilarious while I was reading it, and that is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. The Thursday Murder Club is set in a retirement home essentially, and it follows a group of people who have formed this club to solve old cold cases that the police have never been able to solve. Until one day, a murder takes place in their own village, and then another one, and then they find evidence of a decades-old one. This particular club comes together using their various connections to solve the crime, bamboozle the police, and get to the bottom of these murders. There are plenty of twists in this book to really keep you on your toes, which I really, really love, because you go into every sort of suspect thinking, yes, it's definitely them, and then it's all kind of explained away. And I just can't stop talking about how hilarious I find it when the club just bamboozles the police and manipulates information out of them and gives nothing in return. Like there's a scene where they somehow link everything back to cake, and the cop is so confused and so stuffed full of cake that he doesn't know what he's doing, he doesn't know what he's saying. So read this book because it will put a smile on your face and it will throw you into the mystery and have you begging to find out what's happened and who's done it. We are almost there. We are up to the last two books of my books to get you out of a post-Christmas slump, and the first one is another one that I borrowed from the library, and that is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. Truly Devious is set at Ellingham Academy, which is a famous academy for particularly gifted individuals based in Vermont. It was founded by Albert Ellingham, who turned the school into a location filled filled with riddles and mysteries, and that is definitely where the start of this story takes place. Shortly after the opening of the school, Albert's wife and daughter were kidnapped, and this particular case was never solved. The only real clue was a mocking riddle full of potential murderous plots, signed by Truly Devious. Years later, crime aficionado Stevie Bell enters the Ellingham Academy School with the purpose of solving this years-old cold case. Truly Devious makes a mysterious return, and the past crawls out of its grave as all of a sudden other students start popping up missing and murdered as well, and Stevie Bell is set on figuring out what's happened, solving the old crime, and hopefully figuring out what is happening in the present as well. The book itself crosses two timelines and does it really, really expertly, constantly linking them to each other. And then anyone who knows me knows that I love it when stories are told through a number of different mediums, because I think it offers this perfect different perspective and gets the story quite quickly moving when you need it to. And in this particular case, they use police transcripts from interviews with potential suspects, which were really, really interesting to read. And I just love a bunch of mystery solving teams to get me out of my winter slump. Speaking of, the next book and the last book on this list is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is definitely another group of mystery solving teens. The Inheritance Games follows a woman by the name of Avery who essentially comes from nothing, and her plan is just to keep her head down and work hard for a better future for herself, until an eccentric billionaire dies, and out of the blue he's basically given his entire fortune, his entire estate, to Avery with the condition that she will receive it so long as she lives at his estate for 1 year. This particular billionaire has 2 daughters, I believe, and 4 grandsons who definitely expected to receive the lion's share of this inheritance, so when Avery comes around, they're not too happy to see her. This definitely reminded me of Knives Out in a lot of ways, the movie with Daniel Craig, I believe, in that it's very much a case of how far will these people go just to keep their fortune. In that way, The Inheritance Games is the perfect book to reel you in and make you forget about the outside, as well as having a kind of sweet, hinted at romance throughout. And then of course you can't forget about the puzzles and the riddles, which are basically a character themselves in this book. They take on a life of their own. They are so complex, so interesting that you kind of try and figure it out yourself, but I don't think I ever could have. And again, this book has the 3rd book in the series. The 2nd one's already out, but the 3rd book is coming out this year, very soon, I believe. So definitely pick this up, read the 2nd one, get into the 3rd one. It's going to be a wild ride. Those are the 12 books to get you out of your post-Christmas slump in January. I hope that you love these. I hope that you give these a go. I hope that if you've already read them that you loved them. Let me know your thoughts on these in the comments down below, and let me know if there's any particular books that you like to read to get you out of this sort of Christmas slump, or to get you away from the summer heat if you are lucky enough to be having a summery January, which I'm very jealous of. As always, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified when I release new content, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!